Good evening. My name is Kira Seipler, Director of Operations for the Albuquerque Film and Music Experience. Welcome to our next film block. We will get started pretty soon, but on behalf of AFMX, our Board of Directors, and our entire staff, welcome to AFMX Virtual Edition 2021. Before we get started with our next event, we would like to thank our presenting sponsors, AFME Foundation, Albuquerque Film Office and Film Liaison, Cindy McCrossan, Albuquerque the Magazine, Bernalillo County Commissioner Stephen Michael Quezada, Presa Terena Olive Oil, Comcast NBC Universal, Real Solutions Airport Meet and Greet Service, Sunny 505, the Baker Law Group, University of New Mexico Film and Digital Arts, Larry Schwartz and Wells Fargo Advisors, Yamaha Entertainment Group, and Jousker Road Productions. For the complete lineup and ticket sales, please visit our website at AFMXNM.com. Just a quick thank you to our technical director, Melody Carlisle. Thank you again, Melody, for making sure that we are heard and seen during this whole broadcast. For our filmmakers, please remember that on Sunday, September 26th, at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, we will announce our award winners on Facebook Live. Be a part of our award ceremony show and show your support for the filmmakers by casting your audience favorite. All the award winners will be announced again on Sunday, so check our Facebook page for more information. So we are moving into our Q&A session for the feature film Bone Cage, one of my personal favorites. And our moderator tonight is Andy Kastelic. Just a reminder that our audience members can ask questions of our filmmakers just by putting in your question in the chat box, and we will do our very best to make sure that they are answered. Please note that all the center stage and Q&A conversations are recorded, so you can go back and listen to them. They will be available online through October 11th. Now to introduce our moderator. Andy Kastelic is a director, actor, and writer from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Following his theater studies and film work in Washington and New Mexico, he attended the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute in Los Angeles. After returning to the Southwest, he earned a BA in film from the University of New Mexico while continuing work as a filmmaker, writing and directing a number of award-winning short films through his production company, Balian Pictures. Charged with a fierce love for storytelling and cinema, he's out there now chasing the good and powerful story, and he is one of my favorite people. Please welcome Andy Kastelic.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kira. Thank you very much. Very honored tonight to be moderating for Taylor Olson's Bone Cage. Pretty incredible movie. I'm just going to jump right into this. I'm going to be reading a little bit of Taylor's bio here. There's some things in here I want everyone to know. Taylor is an actor, writer, and filmmaker, and a recipient of the Arts Emerging Artist Recognition Award in Nova Scotia back in 2020. He's written or directed a number of short films, which have won prizes at film festivals across the country, including CBC's Short Film Face Off. Most recently, he's completed his feature film directorial debut, Bone Cage, which he adapted from a Catherine Banks play by the same name. I'm going to have him tell you a little bit more about that. Swept awards at the Finn Atlantic International Film Festival, and it's been picking up steam ever since. Taylor, I want to get to a few things here. So, right off the bat, tell us how family history and your experience with the play led us to tonight's feature presentation.
Well, it's nice to, first of all, it's nice to, we talked on the phone before, it's nice to see your face, and I'm a big fan of seeing some of your work recently too. So my family's worked in the logging industry for generations. My dad is a heavy duty mechanic, worked in the logging industry. On one side, my grandfather ran a boom boat business where it's, they gather logs in the harbor. And then my other grandfather on the other side actually ran a tree processor, a lot like Jamie. And so when I read the play in university, I mean, this play, it's a beautiful play. I've loved it for a long time. It's taught in universities all across Canada. And I really connected to it because I saw a lot of my family, people I loved in the play. And 2 years after I graduated from theater school, I studied classical acting at Dalhousie. There was auditions for the play, and I got to go and do the stage play here in Chapuktuk, Halifax. And it was about the second day of rehearsals that it kind of clicked, and there was something in my head that just kept saying, this could make a film. You know, I've seen the destruction of clear cuts. I've seen the machines operating. I know how almost like monster like they can be. I've seen these images in real life, and it would be interesting to take the poeticism of Catherine's writing, which is really sort of lyrical, and try to translate that visually.
And how did you go about getting rights, contacting her? I mean, what is it, a cinch, the whole thing, or did you have to fight for it?
You know, it's interesting. I knew, like I said, I wanted to do it since the second day of rehearsal. And so I went, and the DOP and I on this film, Kevin Fraser, had never worked together as with me as a filmmaker before, but I'd acted in a lot of films that he'd shot. And we had talked about how we wanted to do something together, and we thought it'd be a short. But as soon as I thought about this film, I thought about him and knew he would just be perfect for it. So I actually went and talked to him weeks before I talked to Catherine. So we were in rehearsal for a while, and then we went in and performed the show. And it was the last night that I sent Catherine an email and said, hey, can we get coffee and talk? And I know a lot of people had tried to option it beforehand, and had tried to sort of convince Catherine to make a film out of it. But I think she was concerned that folks didn't really know the world as well as, you know, and I had this personal experience with my family. And so she was incredibly kind, and you know, obviously it's my first feature, so she's given this Governor General Award-winning play, which is fantastic, to this kid who knows if he can pull it off, and she just amazingly put some trust in me, and from there we, you know, created an option where it was like, we don't have any money now, but as soon as we get production money, like money for production, and we go to our first day of principal photography, this is what we can give you, sort of thing. And we made that deal. And so we went ahead and went through the adaptation process, and she was my story editor. So I had her every step of the way to make sure that, you know, I was reflecting the inner world of the characters.
And after the film came out, not after it came out, I'm sure you gave her a nice personal screening, or, I mean, how did that go down? How did she react to it?
Well, it's funny, we really wanted to do that, like a personal screening, but by the time that the film was completed and we were getting ready to try to premiere, we were in full-on COVID. We were in the pandemic. And so I was waiting and waiting until hoping that we'd get an in-person screening for the first screening and send it to her. But what ended up happening is I sent it to her like as a Vimeo link a week before, so that she could see it on her own. And you know, I like, overall, she really loved it. And I think one of the hardest things for a writer sometimes is that you hand over your piece, and it is an adaptation process. The new writer has to make it their own. They have to see it from their own point of view and through their own lens. And so I think that's always tricky. But you know, I was really happy with her response to it, and she was really happy with the film. So that's, I mean, you can't ask for more than that. Everything else is like icing on the cake, right?
Yeah. And the adaptation didn't go too bad. Canadian Screen Award, that's nomination, I'm sorry, for adapted screenplay. I mean, what does that mean? That's a big deal to me, man. I mean,
yeah.
How did you take that? And does it mean anything to you?
I mean, it's funny because, you know, I think a lot of the time as artists, we try to go, okay, well, awards don't mean anything.
Sure.
You know, we just make it for the art. But at the end of the day, they do. Like, it's a recognition from your peers. And in Canada, you know, for Canadian artists, for awards in Canada, that's about as good as it gets here. So it was pretty neat. I got to be honest. And what it means, I think, for future filmmaking is people are more likely to say yes when you apply for grants. People are more likely to fund you the next time. So I think that's what it really means at the end of the day, is here's a stamp of approval from your peers across Canada that says, maybe let this kid make another movie, sort of thing, right? Yeah.
Now, in wearing, okay, what do we got? We got writing, got the adaptation, the writing, we have directing and acting. Now, you've done plenty of short films before this. You really put the time into that. But when it came to the feature, were there any drawbacks to you wearing all those hats? I mean, if you're not careful, you can let things slip in there. What did slip? Or was there anything?
Yeah,
Even if it was
really,
small.
yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, you know this because you do the same game.
Yeah.
You wear all those hats as well. And so I think it's really twofold. One is that when you are, as an actor and you know the role and you've written it and you're so inside of it, you can see things really subjectively. You have an influence from inside the world. You can, on the first day, the first take of the first scene, you can choose that right scene that you can set the tone for the film, that everybody goes, okay, that's the movie we're making. You have that power. There's a privilege in that. And same with working with the actors. They know you're in the trench with them. You're all in sort of the same fight. That's the positive side. And then I think, yeah, the side that it's hard to be aware of, and that you do let something slip. And I think that's is that you are so inside of it that you're not as objective as you would be standing outside of it. And I think that's maybe the hardest piece. I was really lucky. I'm sure you're in a similar position where you have a great team that supports you and that surrounds you, and that you're all here for, you're bringing your vision, but it's the team in a collaborative nature that puts all the pieces together, and you're working off of each other. And I was really lucky to have incredible support. And I don't think any of that would be possible without that support from your teammates and being on the same page. Like, I mean, if you're not on the same page when you're wearing that many hats with your DP, with everyone else, I think that could be really difficult. And I was just lucky to have everybody buy in.
And how did you assemble that team? You said it's the first time you worked with him in that capacity, your DP, which is big thing. But everyone else, I mean, did they all come from the theater, community that you've been working in, or was it all new?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, on the film side, essentially almost all new folks. Like Melanie Wood, our producer, we'd never worked together in this capacity. Sound mixer, editor, composer, everyone in that sense was new. And it started with me going to Kevin and saying, I think you're the right person to shoot this film. And we built the team together from there. Going a lot off of his recommendations and people that he's worked with and trusted. And so I just put my trust in him because I knew the relationship with your director of photography is like, you got to be twins. You got to be like a hive mind and be thinking the same thing at the same time. So that whole team in filmmaking sense was new. The actors, I knew every single one of these folks, and I'd worked with every single one of them. Sam Vigneault, who plays Kevin in the film, we did the stage play together actually. And everyone else was new from the stage version, but I'd worked with Amy Graining, who played Chicky on multiple films before, and the only person I hadn't worked with was Ursula Calder, who played Krista. It was her first movie ever. She was just finishing theater school when I cast her. We'd never met before we did the audition, but she was just kind of perfect in her first read of the role. And so everyone else, it's funny, it's such a small community here that everybody, so there's an advantage in that, getting to know them personally before you start working.
Awesome. I mean, I don't know what the percentage usually is. There's that saying that goes around, casting is 90% of the battle.
Yeah.
80. I mean, do you believe in that?
I think so, to a degree, right? I mean, if you cast the right people, then they're going to bring the right pieces to the work. But also, you cast the right people, and they say like casting is 90% of the job. It's like, that's true if you also cast them based on the right personalities that are going to fit together on the day, and people that are going to put in the work too, right? Like, I mean, if you've got people who are going to put in the work and you're giving them the right feedback, then your job becomes very easy.
That was a simple answer. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, look, critics, the industry, festivals, they're reacting really well to the film. And it's important, that's an important facet for after film comes out. People that aren't involved with the industry at all, people that you grew up with, family, people in the logging industry. I mean, how are they reacting to it? And that's one. And two, I'd like to know if anyone has watched it that it didn't resonate with, that they found something they found something wrong with it to them. Not technically, just what you did with it. Is that making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so yeah, the first question, it's really divided. I mean, and I think a film like this, I was kind of expecting that it would be divided, that it's really close to so many people that either they're going to feel seen and take that as a positive thing. Someone like my family's working in the logging industry, feeling like, wow, that was the first time I've seen that in that way. It like felt really like our world. And then there's other people who watch it and they work in the same industry and they're going, look how you made us look. Look how you depicted us. No, there's even people
like a villain, or in that way,
or like it made us like people who felt like, oh, it makes us look bad, or talking about or clear cutting in this way, or the forestry industry in this way, around clear cutting specifically, like it makes us look bad. And it's like, yeah, I mean, in a sense, what we're trying to depict though is the individual, the small guy who doesn't really have the options to make the bigger choice. And so yeah, people had a lot of emotions around that sometimes. And then on the other side, like technically in the way that we approached it, yeah, there's definitely like there's definitely folks who really didn't like how we shot the film, or how we depicted the characters. I think we kind of knew that going in, that we were really going to divide certain people one way or the other based on both our stylistic choices, and then how we talked about the content, and how we sort of didn't shy away from how dark this situation could get for someone. Yeah.
And very quickly, just I didn't know it going in. A very side note, audience tonight. The difference between yes, there's the underbelly of clear coating. Now, what's the other option that is not depicted in the film?
Yeah, selective logging, where you're going in, you're choosing specific trees instead of just wiping everything out. And what it is, it's sustainable forestry, where you can keep forests growing for a long time, and it keeps the forest healthy. Actually, it's good for the forest, and so they're quite different beasts. I mean, ironically enough, those sort of really beautiful shots in the woods that you see in the film, that's in a selective woodlot, in comparison to the clear cutting that you see as well. So those are two different worlds. One where you're saying, okay, there's still trees here, they're spread out from one another, but this looks like a beautiful, healthy forest. That's a forest that's actually still being logged. It's
Is it as common, or it's just not as?
No, I mean, it's not as financially
Sure.
Yeah, you don't make as much money, right? I mean, there's a thing that like Jamie even says in the film, and it always struck me in the play, this one piece, that Jamie would talk about working himself out of a job, because my dad used to say it all the time. He'd say, I'm just working a job clear cutting, and it's going to mean that I don't have a job later on, because there's going to be nothing else to cut. And so it's like clear cutting is a quick, fast, good buck, but what does it do to the environment, and is it sustainable? No. Yeah.
Now, should we be reading in that, I mean, is environmentalism in any form going to be popping up in future films, or was it pretty specific to this, or is it on your is it on Canada's mind? I mean, is this this wiping out of the land. I mean, is that a pretty prominent?
That's a really good question. Yeah.
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 I mean, what else? I felt like was I reading in one of your interviews that I mean, is oil in the same boat as logging? I mean, is it drying up in certain regions?
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's
I was not the most articulate
drying
I could
up.
be. Apologies.
No, it's a really good question. I mean, I would say that the similarities are in that the way that the oil industry is run in Alberta is again not sustainable. It's not necessarily clean at all. I think there's some people who do find a way to make all industries clean somehow, or close as they can be. And in Canada, a huge amount of our economy is run off of the oil fields, and so it's a really tricky conversation. There's so many things in play, similar to the forestry industry. So yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I think it's a thing on our minds a lot, and I think it's a thing on sort of our generation's mind too, thinking about the future, and what it looks like, and knowing that too, like we're like white folks are settlers on this land in Canada. Like in here, we're in Chipuktuk, which is Halifax, and knowing that
Could you
what
say
we
that one
did-
more time? I was going to pronounce that earlier, but say it.
Oh yeah, like Chipuktuk, and it's the Mi'kmaq. It's Mi'kmaq for I mean what like settlers call Halifax, and so one of the things I think that's on our mind too, similarly, that we didn't tackle in this film because I'm not the right voice to talk about it, is that we took land and then we harvested it and clear cut it. And so, I think that is really another aspect on a lot of people's minds. And so for me, yeah, I could see definitely in future films, and I'm slowly with a writing partner working on another feature that is set in the backdrop of, the slow or not so slow anymore climate crisis that we're kind of in. Yeah.
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 Dip back really quickly to the technical aspect. I did want to touch on that. There's I don't want to call it frenetic. There's a handheld energy to this movie. Are you up to discussing the creative function of that? I mean, it's pretty apparent throughout the entire film. I mean, you may dip to other forms, but I mean, why, Jamie? Why, Jamie?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we really wanted to capture was through the cinematography a feeling of a few things. One of them being isolation. There's
Jamie,
a lot of times.
Taylor, sorry.
That's okay.
Character name, Jesus.
One of the things we want to do is just capture isolation and how Jamie's isolated, and by doing that in these sort of longer takes that we really held and choreographed, so that hopefully they felt almost spontaneous sometimes, and like you're saying, yeah, frenetic, like these moments where we would just isolate him in the frame for long periods of time, without seeing or going to anyone else, to create a feeling of isolation, and the handheld energy sort of matching sort of the internal world that he is in. It's sort of chaotic. It's not controlled. That's how he feels inside. It's sort of all bubbling and creeping to the surface. And so the camera work has the similar sort of energy, and other scenes where this sort of bubbling effect. And the way that, when I was thinking about the structure of the film, and adapting it, I was thinking it doesn't have a traditional structure, and to force one wouldn't make sense based on what Catherine's play was in her writing. And so I always imagined it as just being this idea of this pot that slowly is going to boil over. But within that, his energy right off the top is pretty frenetic and chaotic inside. And so that's kind of what we wanted to capture. And then these long choreographed takes were just us not wanting to break tension by cutting away as much as we could hold the camera until we needed to cut, we would. And also to sort of carry over just this feeling that's hard to explain from the stage production. of
So I was gonna ask, yeah,
things
that
happening in real time.
yeah, okay, yeah, that phone call with the recruiter there. That's a what was that? That was a 4, 5, 6 minute text, maybe longer. I don't know. That's
Yeah,
you're
it's
right though. Not breaking away. I made it pretty powerful. Yeah. Sorry to
well,
interrupt.
thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first scene that we sort of conceptualized. Actually, was that was the idea that's where the idea first came in. Was it was one of the scenes in the play that I always felt was really powerful, and I was thinking, how do you recreate the scene? You know, when you go into it and not take away the tension. So we decided that we were going to shoot the whole thing in one creeping long take that held the tension, and that's kind of where the idea was formed, and then we just kind of ran with it. Yeah.
Good. And it was consistent throughout. I appreciated that. I'm going to dip. There's a salt wire article out there because I'm curious. Olsen has learned to be creative with funding and finding ingenious ways to stage scenes like Bone Cage's fist fight and car crash. Does that mean is there a reason they said that for the fist fight?
Interesting. I mean,
do you remember that being done in an ingenious way?
No, I didn't think so necessarily, but we did do it in one take, and that was mostly to keep with this idea, right?
Okay.
So,
whereas a conventional,
it kept
you
with
might
the convention.
Sure.
Yeah, and we we're shooting from the back of the pickup through the back window, right? And so we've got a grip operating the camera at that point, and then Kevin's running beside the truck, and as we get out of the truck, he passes the camera over and catches it, and then runs up with us for the fight, and then we run back. And so that was mostly though to keep within the style of the film. So
sure.
Whereas little things like the car sort of crash, we knew that we couldn't do it because we made the movie on 175,000 Canadian. I don't know what that is in US dollars. I think it's around 130K. And so we knew that we couldn't shoot the car crash because we couldn't afford it. So we sort of built this jump cut style into the car crash, and then said, well, that's going to feel pretty out of place if we don't build that style into the rest of the film. So that's where the jump cuts came from early on in the film, and we used them when it felt appropriate, so that once hopefully we got to the car crash, it wasn't too obvious that we didn't have the money to shoot it. Yeah.
Oh, I have a question here. I still have a few more for you, but I want to ask this. Taylor, can you talk about the coloring process of the film? There was a different color scheme that lent itself to the mood of the film. Yeah, talk about the coloring process.
We were really lucky. We had an independent colorist who worked with us, who works on a lot of like the larger TV shows that shoot here, the studio productions, or service productions, I should say. And so we didn't have a lot of time with him though. And one of the ideas that we had was, let's make things early on brighter, bluer, just a touch, but hopefully grounded and feeling earthy, like living in earthy tones, but a little brighter, a little bluer, a little bit more blue sky, just matching Jamie's psychology. And then as the film goes on, we just slowly color it a touch darker, a little bit. Hopefully just gradually enough that it's not too obvious, but that it does get darker. And then also, in the writing of it, shooting at night later on into the film more and more and more, as much as we could, using those two things going hand in hand, hopefully to feel the psychological change.
Do you sit in on the editing process?
Yeah, I was in Newfoundland, which is a province just a little bit to our right here on the East Coast, during the assembly, but then everything else, the editor and I worked through together, and we just sat and tried a million things sometimes. But as you can imagine, because we shot these longer takes, a lot of it was quite fixed, and we're going, what frame do we want to cut in at, and what frame do we want to cut at? So there was a lot of play in other scenes, but a lot of that was had to be pre-designed. Yeah.
Are you coming more from, where did it really start? Did it really start for you in theater first, or was it film? Even if it was high camera, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I fell in love with storytelling watching movies, but the thing that was closest to me, like in terms of it being accessible, was theater. So I went to theater school to be an actor in theater, and then coming out of school, there's this show that shoots here that's kind of like known around the world, Trailer Park Boys. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's kind of like our one show that kind of blew up here. And John Dunsworth, who played Mr. Leahy, got me into a couple films, and then I fell in love with film, honestly, even more than theater. But I still do both, and theater was kind of like the beginning of it all. Yeah.
Do you feel like you were ready for your first feature? Not
Oh,
that any
no.
in a yeah, expand on that. I mean, do you think that you had what skills were you lacking going into your first feature? Do you think?
I feel like
That's
so
an unfair
many.
question, but yeah.
No, I feel like so many. It's such a great question. I mean, so I got the funding for this feature, and said, okay, I got to make one last short film just to try out what I want to do with the feature. And so we did, and that was important. And I think that helped me for this feature in particular. But you know, between finding out that we actually got the money and us going to camera, I spent like every living minute watching and studying films, even more than I already had, because I felt like I understood story emotionally, and
Sure.
like there, I understood the resonance of it, and I knew certain things that I loved about films and filmmaking, and things that I didn't have a taste for. But I don't know if you can ever be exactly ready. I didn't feel ready until about a month before we went to shoot, and one day I just went, okay, I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready to make the movie. I don't know why it clicked, but it was just like, all right. And then from there on, it felt like just a blast. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's why I was asking if you sit on how heavily you sit on the editing. I know that some, once it's shot, it's in the can. I mean, yeah, they'll see a few cuts and then they're out. But I wasn't sure if you were more specific about it. And
Yeah, I'm pretty hands-on in the edit.
Good.
Not to micromanage, but I like that collaborative process of sitting with your editor and you're chatting things out and going, well, why don't we just try that, or why don't we try that, or and sort of like best idea wins is always a game, I think.
Rehearsal process for Bone Cage, or was
Yeah,
there?
we had 3
Theater
days.
folks. Yeah. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
3 days.
we had 3 days, and one was a full day and 2 were half days. And so we had 2 half days with the actors, like 4 hours each. And then we had a full day with Kev, with camera for some of the interior house stuff, because we weren't really lighting this film. We were doing it with practicals, supplementing when we needed to, but as much as we could, trying to shoot it practically with natural light. And so we had to really, time everything out. And that last day was really to make sure, okay, that lamp's in the right place, and this is here, and all right, let's put an aperture bulb in here, and little things like that, so that we could just shoot 360 as often as possible.
Yeah. If there was a hub of, in your opinion, if there was a hub of film in Canada, where is it?
It's in Toronto.
It's in Toronto.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Are you? What's if you had to guess where your film career was going to take you? Is it going to a hub? Or is it staying where you are? I know it's maybe too soon to tell, but are you still shooting everything where you are
right now? Yeah. I mean, I think I love the community here, and I love making films here. So I'd love to make films here forever. If to sort of take it to the next step, at some point I need to go and shoot something somewhere else, I will. But I love making films here, and I love this community. So it's one of the things where I'm willing to go do it elsewhere if need be. But until then, I'd love to keep making films here. The thing that's great in Canada is we do have like a public funding body. We have Telefilm, and you can get like up to 49% of your production funding through them, and then go from there. So and that's regionalized across the country in different regions. So there is an opportunity to keep making movies here, which is nice. Yeah.
Taylor, give me your. I'm just full of unfair questions tonight. Yeah, I want to know a big lesson. Sure, I do want to know the biggest. Yeah, maybe you don't want to talk about. What do you find was the biggest mistake you did in Bocage that you would never do on a film going forward? Like it was one.
Oh yeah,
It was one that
Yep.
that hit you.
Yeah, totally. The biggest mistake was, and although it was the design of the movie in every way, was I never shot any coverage that I didn't pre-plan. And so in terms of like how we shot the movie in these really long takes, and like almost every cut other than jump cuts you see in the film were meticulously planned. This is exactly how it's going to be in prep the 6 months before. Most of those things, like there was some things we found in the edit, especially with like montages or like things that you saw at the end, not to give it away for anyone who hasn't seen it, but after he has his big gesture, things like that we found in the edit, but most of it was pre-planned. And in the end, the thing I learned was that there are moments that I would wish I had this. I wish I had that. And so that was the thing, was I'd go, okay, I just, even if I think this is going to be it, I'd shoot the extra thing anyways, just because you never know when you're going to want it.
So budget some time for spontaneity or
yeah. And I guess it's even more so like budgeting time for spontaneity for sure. But I think it's also saying, okay, it's okay to say, I'm also going to get this thing that I think I'm not going to use. That's not breaking your vision. I think like it takes a bit of like, it took me shooting that first movie to go, it's okay to pick up that extra shot that I don't think I'm going to use. And I'm 100% confident right now I'm never going to use that. It's worth getting just in case you might. Guess what? It just sits in a hard drive somewhere. It's not a big deal. It doesn't mean that you don't have a vision, that you're not stepping into it with an idea and a point of view and a perspective. It just means that you're doing a couple things for safety, and that's okay. Whereas going into the making the movie, I was like, no, if this is what I'm thinking it's going to be, that's all we're going to do, and we're going to get it and move on. That was the big mistake and lesson. Yeah.
Okay. And are you putting that into practice on your second
Yeah.
outing? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What are you working on now?
I'm working on a feature film called Look at Me. It's another micro budget, and it's being shot in piecemeal. So it's being shot essentially over a year, small chunks at a time, a few days here, 4 days there, sort of thing. And it's about my personal experience with eating disorders and self-image and talking about it from like a man's perspective. And so it's adapted from my stage play. I did the stage play solo show over a few different venues over a few different years, and it's adapted from that. And so it's shot over a long period of time, because in between each sequence I'm getting in better shape, and we're watching the seasons change. So it's a really interesting experiment in that sense.
And when is that going to wrap? Or do you have an
Hopefully
expectation?
March 7th, 2022. Hopefully.
Talk about meticulous planning, dude. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right. And then I'm reading that you have you got some television projects, hopeful television projects in the works too. I mean, are you trying to stick hands everywhere? I mean, what's your goal here?
So I've got a digital series, so it's not quite television, but it is for a small network here for Bell 5 here in Canada. It's a 5-episode, 15-minute series. And so it's like streaming. It's like a small streaming service that we're shooting in the fall, like late October to early November. And so that'll be my first time doing that, which is exciting.
Yeah, what interests you in that format? I mean, extending.
Yeah, I do love TV. I'd love to make TV. I'd love to have a TV show one day to shoot. I love the longevity of that, and I love the how in TV you can create whether it's episodic or whether it's sort of serialized or if it's a procedural, you're taking things in small chunks that actually talk about a larger theme, and you have these huge arcs. I do love that, and so this is kind of the first step into that world. And although Bone Cage is a very heavy drama, I do love creating comedy as well, and so this is a comedy, and getting to sort of take another stab at a comedy is pretty fun.
Afro Viking Pictures.
Yeah.
That's you. And is you're running that with partner Kumbi.
Yeah.
What you're acting, and this is your production company?
Yeah, the two of us together. Yeah.
And you're running all these projects through this.
Yeah, so we've got Look at Me, my second feature, and then we've got King and Pawn, this digital series, and then in January she's directing a feature that we co-wrote together that I'll act in, called Bystanders. So that's pretty exciting. It'll be her first proper full feature, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is AFMX. We're very happy to have Bone Cage. I'm curious. This being your first kind of circuit with a full length film, what are you looking for in festivals when you're going about submitting?
You know, the biggest thing, and I mean, you guys are exactly a perfect example of this, is there's two different types of festivals that you're really looking for. One is the festivals that are going to nurture independent films and care about filmmakers, and are really interested in like a longevity in terms of a relationship there too. That will like not just go, okay, cool, we saw your first feature, that worked well for us, but we'll actually wait for your second feature and feel like interested to view the second one. And then of course there's other film festivals in Canada that you go to the telefilm sort of index, and you're hoping to hit these festivals that count towards points, like literally towards your next feature. So those were the two types of festivals that we hit, and so we're really happy to be here because you guys all love filmmakers, and it's really evident. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Are you still, most people don't go back to shorts, and feature you can't do as often as you gotta fund it, you gotta put it together, you gotta dedicate all this time to it. Are you interested in doing shorts still, or are you?
Oh yeah.
Why is that?
I mean, one, how do you ever turn down making a movie, no matter what length of it is ever? But two, I do love the format. It is interesting, and honestly, it's one that still like evades me, and I feel like understanding it. I feel like the feature film format, you grow up watching movies, like the full-length films, and in a sense it can actually get into your bones a little bit easier, and I feel like I understand features a lot more, and I'm still trying to figure out short. So I directed a short film that a close friend of mine wrote this winter, and it was a comedy, and it was the second comedy I directed, and yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more shorts, and it probably will, with certain feature concepts going forward, make a short film first, try things out, hit the festival circuit, and hopefully it helps you gain traction, try to make a feature. So didn't do that with this feature right now, but the next one I'm looking at, I would definitely make a short film version first. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And traction, how is Bone Cage doing? What's in Canada? It's available. How is it worldwide? Yeah.
So in Canada, it's available on VOD across Canada right now. It was released July 6th, so we're a minute into that, and we'll be streaming. We'll be allowed to announce where later this fall. I think we'll be streaming on a platform, and then worldwide, we're still waiting to see what happens. We're hoping that we can get some sort of U.S. distribution, and maybe hoping that we're screening in Beijing International Film Festival in competition for the Forward Future there, and hoping that we're doing a market screening parallel, and hoping that maybe something happens in China. Who knows?
Do you like this part of the process? Because I think people outside of the industry think it stops once you have your first screening, but I mean, you gotta see it all the way through. Is this a frustrating part of the process, or do you enjoy it? Distribution.
Oh, I mean, it's really interesting. I think because it's the first feature, I really am enjoying the process. at least, you know, here with and in Canada with our distributor Level Film, it's been really awesome. They've been awesome, and it kind of came together pretty simply for us. So it was quite nice.
Well, good for you, Taylor. Good for you. All right.
But that's in Canada. I mean,
Sure.
in terms of the States, we've reached out to lots of sales agents and tried to get something going, and it has been difficult, and that part can be frustrating. And one of the, you know, the second biggest mistake, I guess, maybe even the biggest one that we made, was we didn't know going in a lot about the business side of this. You know, we just were focused on, let's make a good movie, you know, and we kind of got there, and we're in festivals and we're excited, and we're talking to sales agents in Europe and the US, and they go, which festivals have you screened at? And we're going, these ones. And they go, how many festivals have you screened at? This many. And they go, you've already done all this, and you've done a lot of it virtually. Doesn't give us a lot to work with. And so, you know, that was one of the things that we sort of were hit by, and went, oh, well, interesting. And I was at the Rotterdam lab this year, the producers lab, and was learning through them that, you know, go to a sales agent early on when you've got a cut that you really love and you think it's in a good place. Go to a sales agent, then get them on board, get them to help you get into festivals. That's part of their job. They can help get into the bigger festivals and work alongside you. And so, you know, because we were really trying to target like strong independent sales agents and stuff. So we're still on the hunt. We're still hoping that someone says, hey, we like this enough that they want to distribute it in some way in the US and or any other territory. So that's one of the things we learned big time.
And so look at me when that wraps up. You'll be putting that into play. Have you already actually put in the tell yourself it's okay to shoot this because
Yes.
you may, I mean, are you actually doing that on this?
I mean, it's funny because the design of this film is so different visually and stylistically that it is really, they're apples and oranges, honestly. But yeah, I mean, there are some things when we have time that we're just picking up, and sometimes it's ending up, because we're cutting as we go. We've shot, you know, maybe 30 something minutes of it, and it is ending up sometimes some pieces on the cutting room floor. But it's funny, like the way that this is designed, it is quite a bit of coverage in the design, so it's a bit different. It's hard to say exactly. I'll have to wait until I shoot this digital series, which is more in the vein of Bone Cage. And in the shot listing of it, at least so far, I am definitely going, here's the 3 that I think are going to make it, and here's the 3 that we'll just get just in case. So hopefully we'll see.
I'm going to wrap this up soon, everyone. I do have some very, very crucial questions. I'm going to 3 last crucial questions, a little rapid fire here. Taylor, if you had to choose one favorite movie, because we're all going to judge, we're all going to judge you by this. So what is it?
I know it feels. I know people are gonna be like, "Oh, of course it is," but There Will Be Blood is my favorite. It's my favorite movie.
Well, what is it about it?
It's the movie that I saw when I was like 17, and I thought, "Oh my God, you can do that in movies. You can tell a story like that. This sort of, I mean, he's the first anti-hero I saw depicted in such an engrossing way, and it said so much with the film, and the cinema, like everything about the filmmaking was to me impeccable, and everything about his performance was to me impeccable, and it was all the pieces of things that I loved about films wrapped into one. And I honestly, every night before I went to bed, I'd watch at least so many minutes of that movie before we shot the next day, just because I loved it so much. Yeah.
Wow, There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
Favorite book, if you had to choose one at this point in life.
There's a book, and it's not fiction, but there's a book called How to Stop Acting by Harold Guskin, and I love that book. It's about how to stop acting, how to, you know, when you're in the moment, how to stop performing so much, and it talks a lot about, you know, the soulful approach to the work, you know, something that's very soul fulfilling. It's totally changed how I've approached acting since. Yeah.
How to Stop Acting. And favorite band. If you had to choose one.
Hosier right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal one more. Sorry, guys. Very quickly. The which brings me to the score for Bone Cage.
Mhm.
Minimalist. Would we agree on that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
How much of a hand did you have in that?
In terms of choosing, I mean, James O'Toole, who's also did the sound design on the film and location sound.
Wow.
Yeah, I did all the things. um, him and I made a decision pretty early on, or that it was only going to be these specific moments that we sort of had pre-planned that we're going to have scored sound. These sort of like heightened moments in the film,
Yeah.
and that the rest of it was going to come from the world. Most of the music that you hear in the film, even just like songs that play, those are all played like live on the day. I would say like 70% of those songs were played live on the day because we just wanted to feel sort of like the texture on the day for the actors. It's like you're an actor. You're like, I've seen your work. You're a great actor. Like you know what it's like to feel the textures on the day and have that aid. And I wanted all of us to have that. And so that was a decision pretty early on that we said only in the heightened moments, and the rest of it's got to feel as real as possible.
So you pretty much had a consistent sound guy throughout the whole. That's a nice way of doing that. That's a pretty cool way. Yeah.
We're pretty lucky with him. Yeah.
Look, guys, I didn't read most of the awards and recognitions and everything that Taylor has coming up, but actually pretty honored to be talking to Taylor tonight. And keep an eye out for the release here when it happens. And keep an eye out for Taylor. I think you got a lot of articles out there, man. I'm learning a lot about you, and I just think I admire your path, the way you're doing it. It's I can learn from that. I'm learning from that. So bravo, keep it up. And go watch the other movies, guys. Let's celebrate this storytelling thing.
Well,
Taylor, thank you very much, bud.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I admire you a lot too, man. So this is very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Back to you, Kira.
Thank you so much, Andy and Taylor. I feel like I have taken a master class in acting, directing, producing, and everything else. I truly have learned a lot. And this is what we love to do at AFMX, is connecting filmmakers with filmmakers to create these conversations and to learn. So, and personally, I always look forward to Andy's rapid fire. Really, it's one of my favorites. I really do. So everybody stay tuned for our next block at 9 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We are presenting the film block 15 with Mutiny, one of my favorites, My Dinner with Werner. Oh my gosh. Planet Cosmo, you've got to see this one. And In the Event of My Death, some pretty great acting in that one. The moderator for that will be Andrea Hayes. So I hope you can join us. Until then, have a great evening.